I'm going to tell you that I am multiplying two things together and I get an answer of 0. Do you see that? That's what that is. I'm multiplying these two things together and I get an answer of 0. Think about that for a minute. Multiplying two things together and I get an answer of 0. Are you thinking about that? I multiply two numbers together and I get an answer of 0. Can you tell me something about one of these numbers then? If you end up with an answer of 0, how do you multiply two things and end up with an answer of 0? Something has to be multiplied by 0, right? The only way to get an answer of 0 is if you multiply something by 0. That means one of these two things, or maybe both, but at least one of those has to be 0. Would you agree with that? Would you agree with that? Bishop, you're sleeping. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
There's no other way to get an answer of 0, right, Donahue?
Right.
One of those things, at least one of those things, has to be 0. Or they both could be 0. That's the basic idea of today's lesson. You got it? We're done. No, just kidding. But you have to start with this. If you're multiplying two things together or more, if you're multiplying a million numbers together and you end up with 0, that means at least one of those numbers has to be 0, right? So today, instead of two boxes, we're going to multiply some quantities together. We're multiplying quantities together. So I'm multiplying this thing times this one, and I get an answer of 0. What did you just tell me? The only way to multiply and get an answer of 0 is if at least one of those numbers is 0, right? Agree? Just shake your head a little bit. So that means either this thing equals 0, this whole thing equals 0, or this one equals 0. So you have to take each piece and set each piece equal to 0. And now you're going to solve that. That's the easy part, right? How do you solve this? Add 5 to both sides. So x equals 5. That's one solution. How do you solve this one? Subtract 2, subtract 2. There's the other solution. Right? So if only it were that easy. If only it were that easy. Now solve that one. And by the way, the directions say to solve it. You want to know what is x equal to. And since it has a square in there, we haven't solved any that have squares in them. The only thing we've done with squares is factor it. So before we can do this, before we can set it equal to 0, we're going to have to take this thing right here and factor it. That's why we spent a month and a half on factoring. right? So hopefully you can factor. X squared, that has to be x and x. Oops, wrong place. The 8 down there could be 1 and 8, could be 2 and 4. Which one is it? 2 and 4. What about the signs? It's a positive, so either plus, plus, or minus, minus. Plus, plus. So hopefully you can factor it. Once you have it factored, now that's where you have the two things multiplied together equals 0. This thing times this one equals 0. What does that mean? That means one of those quantities has to equal 0. So either x plus 2 equals 0 or x plus 4 equals 0. And then you just finish solving it. You can do that. That's the easy part. So you get x equals negative 4. And over here, minus 2, you get x equals negative 2. Right? And if you plug this in, x is negative 2. If x is negative 2, what's negative 2 plus 2? 0. 0 times anything, it doesn't matter what that is, 0 times anything is going to be 0. Same thing over here if x is negative 4. If you put that here, what's negative 4 plus 4? 0. 0 times anything is going to end up being 0. So you get two answers. Two answers. See the equation that we started with to begin with? The biggest exponent is a 2. That means you're going to have two answers when you're all done. That means you're going to have two answers when you're all done. Are we good so far? Anybody with a question so far? Anybody with a question so far? Hopefully they can see. How about this? Oops. Well, there's a couple ways you could do it. But if you do it the way we're doing, what does it have to equal? What does it have to equal? It has to equal 0. So in order to get this to equal 0 first, we've got to subtract 25 from both sides. It always has to equal 0. That's the whole idea with this method. Multiplying two things and having it equal 0, right? So you've got to get rid of that 25, subtract 25, subtract 25. Now, see if you can factor this. Can you factor this? X squared, x and x. Anybody remember about these when there's no middle term? That's a perfect square, right? What times what gives me 25? And there's no middle term, so it has to add to 0. 5 times 5? What about the sign? Positive and a negative to get a negative, right? And you might want to just quick do the inside-outside double check. What do you get here? Plus 5x. What do you get here? Does that add up to 0? Yes. So you know you did it right. So I'm multiplying two things and I get an answer of 0. This thing times this one equals 0. That means x plus 5 equals 0. Or add 5, minus 5, minus 5. Do we have to write those steps out? Why do I have to write that out every time? I can do that in my head. You know what? In all the years I've been teaching, the people who skip these steps are the ones that end up making the mistakes. They end up making a mistake like x equals 4 here, x equals 2 here. Yeah, they make the sign errors if they don't show all the steps. The more steps you skip, the more likely you are to make a mistake. How about one like this? How about one like, oh, I don't want this. I don't want this. Let's just stick with the book so I don't screw it up, right? How about this? It's already factored for you, right? And it's equal to 0. It's equal to 0, and it's already factored. How many things are being multiplied together here? Count them. 1, 2, 3. Now I have 3 things multiplied together. Does that matter? No. You could have 20 things multiplied together. If they're multiplied together, probably helps if everyone can see. If they're all, see, I have 3 things multiplied together. How about you guys? Can you see? Can you see? Nobody answers me. I have 3 things multiplied together there, right? 1, 2, 3. Doesn't matter. It's the same idea. You're multiplying together, you get an answer of 0. That means one of those things equals 0. The only difference is, instead of having 2 things now we're going to have 3. So 5n could equal 0. N minus 3 could equal 0. Or n plus 6 could equal 0. So now we're going to have 3 answers. That's okay, right? What do you do to solve this? Right, good, yes, you divide by 5. So what does n equal? 0. N equals 0. That's a possible solution. N equals 0. That's a solution now. And then the rest of these, like before, add 3, add 3. N equals 3 is a solution. Whoops. Whoops. You got a minus 6, minus 6. So n equals negative 6. So now you have 3 solutions. Make sense? Make sense? Should we do one more just for fun? Oh, I can tell. You're having fun. How about this one? Oh, this one looks exciting. No, I don't want to do that one. I'm going to make up my own. I'm going to make up my own. This could be dangerous. 2x squared plus 12x equals negative 16. Oh, yeah, okay. Well, first of all, the very first thing you should do when you're doing these, is it equal to 0? Is it? If it's not equal to 0, you have to get it equal to 0. Well, that's easy enough, right? This plus 12x plus 16 equals 0. Donahue, do you know where the markers are in the mailroom?
I do not.
Well, if you go in there, all those cupboards, they're all labeled. It should say markers. Could you grab me a couple blue and a couple red?
What is the name?
Between, where it used to be the old green screen room, between the library and the
Oh.
computer lab. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
You'll see all kinds of stuff. If you see anything else you think I need, just grab it too.
Okay.
Black and red. So I've got it equal to 0. Now what? Factor. But what we haven't done so far, we did it in the assignment yesterday, I believe, the day before. Look. Is there anything common to all of those? Is there anything common? He's shaking his head yes back there. Is there anything in common? 2. 2 goes into all of these. So if you have a common factor, that's what, well, you should look for the common factor first. Check to see if there's anything in common. Yes, there's a 2. Take it out. If there's a 2 in common, take it out. So 2 times what is, that'd be 1x squared. 2 times what is 12? 2 times what is 16? That's not too hard. Now, we need to see if we can factor the stuff in parentheses. Does that factor? Well, if it does, 1x squared, that's got to be x and x. 8 down here could be 1 and 8, could be 2 and 4. What do you say? 2 and 4, I hope. We just did this one 2 minutes ago down there. Signs, plus, plus. So now I have 3 things multiplied together again, right? This one, this, and this. So either this one equals 0, or this one equals 0, or this one equals 0. And you know what to do to solve those. -4. So x is -4. And then you can -2. X equals -2. What about that? Over here, I had one of those out here, but I divide by 5, divide by 5. I get n equals 0. There's an n in that one. Do you see this one? There's no letter in there. Oh, thanks, Donahue. Now you know where the markers are.
Well, that's George.
Of course, right? Look right here. 2 equals 0. And by the way, back up a minute. We are solving. We are looking for values of x that we could plug in here and make that true. We are looking for values of x that we could plug in here and make that true. So one value of x to make that true, x equals -4. Another value of x equals -2 to make that true. 2 equals 0. Does 2 equal 0? Just go like this. Could 2 ever equal 0? 2 is never going to equal 0. So in this case, we need to throw that out. That's not going to give us any solutions in this case. The other one we did, it had a letter in it. It had an n, and when we divided, that gave us a solution. But this one, it doesn't have a letter. And 2 can never equal 0. So in this case, you just have to pitch that one. it's not going to give you any solutions. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Do you think you have it, or should I do about 12 more? You think we got it? Do you have questions? Are there any questions? Does anyone have a question? I think that would be page 239. I think that would be page 239. I think that would be page 239. No. Oh, because I'm looking at the wrong class. That would be page 232. That's more like it. Page 232. This is Thursday. I have 1 to 29 the odds. Page 232. WE 1 to 29 the odds. I should be using green and red. I keep forgetting. 'Tis the season. Right?